Frankie Delgado once had it all: a steady job as a construction foreman, a modest home, a loving wife, and two bright-eyed kids. But he also had a secret, a gambling habit that started with weekend poker nights and evolved into late-night visits to shady betting parlors. When the company he worked for hit a financial rough patch, he started dipping into savings, then loans, trying to win back losses. The downward spiral was fast and unforgiving. Within a year, everything was gone. His wife, Elena, took the kids and left when she discovered he'd gambled away their emergency fund. The bank took the house. Jobless and ashamed, Frankie wandered the city streets, trying to make peace with his mistakes. He never blamed anyone else. He knew this was all his doing. For months, Frankie begged for food near busy intersections. People passed him like he was invisible, dropping a coin here and there. On a cold Tuesday morning, a woman handed him a crumpled $5 bill. With trembling fingers, Frankie walked to the nearest convenience store, not for alcohol, but for a lottery ticket. It wasn't the first one he'd bought while homeless, but it was the last he ever needed. 2 days later, the numbers were drawn. Frankie held the winning ticket for a $45 million jackpot. For hours, he stared at it in disbelief. After verifying it at the lottery office, he wept. Real, raw sobs, not from joy, but from a mix of regret, grief, and an odd hope for redemption. Frankie didn't rush to buy luxury cars or post his win online. Instead, he hired a financial advisor and a lawyer, bought a quiet home outside the city, and invested in clothes, therapy, and time. Time to heal. But despite the new life, he couldn't forget the version of himself on that street corner. Frankie made an unusual choice. He returned to the very places he used to beg. Dressed again in his ragged clothes, he wanted to test the world. Would people treat him differently now that he had millions in the bank, but looked the same as before? One afternoon, Frankie sat outside La Maison Lune, a high-end French restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. He remembered how staff there had once ignored his hungry stares. This time, he simply sat with a paper cup, observing people. "Hey, you! Off the property!" a sharp voice barked. Frankie looked up. A tall man in a crisp black suit stood in the doorway. Manager Charles Whitaker, known for his no-nonsense attitude. He scowled at him. Frankie calmly nodded and left. The next day he returned. Whitaker spotted him again and stormed outside. "I told you to stay away. You scare off my customers," he snapped. "Go beg somewhere else before I call the cops." Frankie left without a word. On the third day, Frankie returned, this time with his lawyer, Mr. Patel, standing beside him in a sleek blue suit. Charles stepped outside, already annoyed. "What now? You brought backup?" he scoffed. Frankie stood up, brushed the dust off his coat, and said gently, "Actually, Mr. Whitaker, I'm here to speak to the staff. Starting today, I'm the new owner of this restaurant, and you're no longer needed." Charles laughed at first, thinking it a joke. Then Mr. Patel stepped forward and handed over official documents. The restaurant had been quietly purchased the night before by Delgado Holdings, LLC. Charles's face paled. You're the new owner?" Frankie nodded. "I was the same man you chased off the sidewalk 2 days ago. You saw a beggar. What you didn't see was a man who had lost everything, trying to remember how to be human again." Charles was fired on the spot. Frankie didn't rush to remodel the restaurant. He made only one change, a brass plaque by the door that read, "Compassion feeds more than hunger." Every week, he returned in his old clothes to sit out front, not to beg, but to remind himself and others of what humility looks like. He'd buy meals for the homeless that passed by and welcomed anyone who needed warmth. Over time, people began to recognize him, not just as the rich man who once had nothing, but as the man who chose kindness when the world had been cruel. He reunited with his children slowly, writing letters to Elena first. After months of communication, she agreed to meet for coffee. She didn't ask for money. Instead, she listened as Frankie explained how far he had come, not in dollars, but in perspective. Eventually, she brought the kids to visit. Seeing their father smile again, truly smile, gave them hope. Though they'd lost years, they were beginning to stitch them back together. Frankie knew he couldn't change the past. He couldn't undo the pain his addiction caused or return all the lost time. But he could build something better moving forward. And he did, day by day. He created a foundation to support addiction recovery and offered second chances to others like him. Former addicts, the homeless, those rejected by society. His restaurant became a symbol of redemption, not because it was fancy, but because it welcomed everyone.